name's Cassie Gerbis, and I'm a faculty member in the environmental studies program. My area of expertise is coastal ecology. So I study seagrasses and seagrass dynamics and why seagrasses are recovering in the Chesapeake Bay. And I teach in the environmental studies program some of the basic courses that everyone takes, like the introduction and some upper level seminars. I also teach intro to environmental science and some other sort of sciencey type of electives like Chesapeake Bay science and management, and I teach an upper level field methods class. I'll hand it over to you, Ellen.
I am Ellen Cole. I'm also an assistant professor in the environmental studies department. I'm a human geographer by training, and I am interested in how urban and environmental policies create and maintain places of injustice. And so I look using feminist and critical race theories to examine that. Just like Cassie, I also teach in our introductory classes, so introduction to environmental studies, as well as some of our capstone classes. And then the other classes that I add are, I've taught the GIS courses, so the computer classes on mapping. I also do this environmental social science and policy courses. So I teach a class in environmental justice and a class on race and place, among other things.
And so we can kind of give you all an overview of the environmental studies program first, and then we'll walk you through some slides that show what some of our past students, what they did while they were at St. Mary's and what they're doing now, and then we can take questions from you all. So the environmental studies major is, broadly, it aims to help students understand how humans interact with the environment, and why. What are the forces driving those interactions? And so it's necessarily interdisciplinary. So a lot of people think, oh, environmental studies, that's science, right? We're going to be out in nature. And so yes, it definitely involves that, but we also integrate social sciences. So you have to understand, why people behave the way they do. What role economics play in our environmental systems, and so on. And we also, look to the humanities to also try to, think through how we understand the environment. So art and literature and history are also important. So the way the major is structured, everybody takes an interdisciplinary introduction class, Intro to Environmental Studies. And so that just is designed to help give students a taste of all the different disciplinary ways we think about the environment, and kind of get them on the path to thinking about the environment in those kind of multifaceted ways. Then there's a bunch of courses that everyone takes. So some basic science courses. Everyone takes a toolkit, so some sort of course, like a stats course or a GIS course, where they learn a tool for doing environmental work. And then everybody has to do some sort of applied course or experience where they apply what they're learning in environmental studies to some kind of practical, real-world problem or situation. And then all of our juniors take a seminar course that is, again, interdisciplinary. And then, their senior year, everybody does some sort of senior capstone experience where they either do a 2-semester research project, which we call a St. Mary's project or an SMP, or a capstone course, which is an upper level sort of student-directed seminar course. And then the things that students can differentiate in their path towards the major are the depth, the area of focus that they choose. So in addition to all those kind of common experiences and courses, every student chooses an area of disciplinary depth that they want to become an expert in. So we kind of divide that into those three tracks: the arts and humanities, the natural sciences, and the social sciences and policy. And they take a handful of courses in that depth, so that chosen area of study. And then they also take at least one elective in each of the other two areas of focus. So, say you take 4 classes in your depth, and your depth is science, then you have to take one more class in arts and humanities and one more class in social sciences and policy. And those are all sort of environmentally focused courses. So that's kind of the major in a nutshell, where, it's interdisciplinary, but you also, every student develops their own kind of unique area of expertise. And then another thing to kind of add about that is that it's very easy to do a double major with the ENST or a minor in another topic, another discipline, because for our depth requirement, you can either take a cluster of courses that you choose, that you select from a list, or you can do a double major or a minor in any other discipline, and that will count towards your ENST major. So it's pretty easy to double dip. And in fact, we often encourage that, especially if a student really does have a strong interest in another discipline, because that really helps them gain that disciplinary area of expertise. And then the environmental studies program really helps them think through how they can apply that expertise to environmental problems, while also acknowledging how the other disciplines are really important for environmental thinking as well.
And just to add to that, I think Cassie really summed it up, but that is also why we are intentionally an environmental studies program and not an environmental science program. And that's also why we're intentionally interdisciplinary, is because we really, truly, all of the faculty are strongly committed to the idea that in order to address the environmental issues that are currently facing our society, that we really do need to think about them from complex and interdisciplinary ways. And that even if you aspire to be environmental science, you have to understand the policy, and you have to understand the arts and humanities as a way to fulfill and be able to be successful in your environmental science degree. And so even in our classes where they're maybe not explicitly interdisciplinary, we do all have that interdisciplinary mindset, and that's always something that we're bringing up and we're talking to our students about, which I think makes our program different from many programs, and is something that we really value as a faculty in how we approach the study of the environment. Mm-hmm.
And someone asked in the chat here, what's the difference between the environmental studies major and minor? It's kind of similar to any other department. The major requires more classes. It's usually a more in-depth exploration of the field, whereas the minor doesn't require as many courses. So our minor, I'm trying to think off the top of my head, is it 5 or 6 courses? Do you know, Ellen?
I think it's 6.
Okay. And it requires, ENST 100, the intro course, and then basically a bunch of electives in environmental studies.
And it does
go ahead.
It requires ENST 100, and it also requires the interdisciplinary. So you have to take ENST 100, you have to take 1 science course. So you get to choose if that's chemistry or if that's biology, whichever one you'd like to do, or environmental science is also an option for that. And then you have to take 3 courses across, again, that's interdisciplinary. So 3 courses across our different breadths. So we have the social studies, social sciences and policy, the arts and humanities, and the physical science. You have to take 1 course in each of those. And then you get 1 course that was whatever your interest is, you get that last course. So it's not as in depth as our major is, obviously, because it's a minor. Because of the ease with which our current program is structured with double majoring, we often encourage our students who are interested in minoring to at least consider majoring. So for example, if you're going to be a bio double major, there's only 5 additional courses you have to do if you're a bio and ENST double major. And that's just because of the overlap that exists in the required courses. It's not the same for every single major, but that is the case for biology. And so in many of our biology students, you know, if they do the math, there really is only one course that they have to take that would be different from the major to the minor. So they just look at their schedule. So a lot of people make that decision to do the major instead of the minor because of the ease of which for many of our other majors on campus that double major is to do.
Yeah, and as we're talking, if you think of more questions, you can just throw them up there in the chat window, and we can kind of take breaks and answer them, or just answer them all at the end. So, so we have some slides to show you just some examples of some recent graduates from the environmental studies program. So we'll kind of go over what they did while they're at St. Mary's and what they're doing now. So I'll go ahead and share my screen. All right. Uh-oh. Okay, here we go.
Am I at first?
Sorry. I think so.
Sorry, I couldn't find the screen. Sorry.
Can you see it now?
I can see it now.
Okay, good.
It was my own. So we chose a variety of students that stood out to us based on both the diversity of their path, but also the diversity of their experiences in both of their, so the diversity of their experiences, at St. Mary's, but also in their paths that they took after St. Mary's. So we just kind of chose a bunch of different students. So the first one is Jillian. Jillian was at St. Mary's from 2012 to 2016. She was a double major in environmental studies and biology and a double minor in art and French. And you're going to see this throughout. It's not uncommon at St. Mary's to see lots of double majors and double minors. Jillian was particularly ambitious. She also, though, did choose to do an extra semester so she could play one more season of soccer. So I think that also gave her a little extra time. She was, played on the St. Mary's women's soccer team, and she was an NCAA Woman of the Year nominee for that, and she's captain of the soccer team. In terms of awards, she was an ENST Fellow, Omicron Delta Kappa Leadership Honor Society, Beta 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 Biological Honor Society. When she was at St. Mary's, her research was on the impact of positioning on 3D oyster reefs on juvenile eastern oyster growth and development. So after Jillian left St. Mary's, what's not on here, she also took some time off, and French was her minor, and it was really important to her. So she went and she worked in France for about 6 months and traveled and worked as a nanny in France. And part of why that's important is when she came back, her job at the Pew Charitable Trust combined her French speaking and her environmental studies and biology, because she was senior associate at the Pew Bertelli Ocean Legacy Project for the Pew Charitable Trust, and she focused on French-speaking parts of the world. And so she actually used that French skills that she gained and combined it with the environmental studies components. And now she's a graduate student at Yale University's Environmental Management Program. So she took a couple years after college and worked, and now has gone back to graduate school.
And I'll add there that the 3D oyster reef project, I guess it's worth mentioning that, so St. Mary's is waterfront, right? So we have this awesome location, and just off the shoreline from our campus is this kind of neat experimental oyster restoration project that some retired professors did in collaboration with the St. Mary's River Watershed Association a few years back, and it's now thriving. There's lots of oysters, lots of other organisms kind of inhabiting these 3D oyster balls that they put out there, and so a lot of students use that as a study site for their research. So it's a really neat opportunity that's right off our shoreline there. Okay. So I'm going to talk about two of our students here on this slide, because they're actually both doing the same thing now. They kind of had different they did different stuff while they were at St. Mary's, but now they both work for USGS, the United States Geologic Service. So it's Megan and Caixa. They graduated last year. While they were at St. Mary's, they were both environmental studies majors. And Caixa was also a bio double major, biology, and Megan transferred from Anne Arundel Community College with an associate's degree. So a lot of our students are transfer students, and it works out pretty well for them. And if you transfer in with an associate's degree, all of your basic core courses are covered. So you don't have to go through the St. Mary's required sequence of core courses. You do still have to do the environmental studies courses. So Megan, her research while she was at St. Mary's focused on creating a pollinator garden on campus. And Caisa's research involved doing some spatial analysis of shoreline and coastal forest change around the Chesapeake Bay. And so this is a picture of Megan doing some sampling in one of her environmental studies classes. And here's Caixa presenting her poster for her research at a scientific conference, the Atlantic Estuarine Research Society. They both also did a handful of internships during the summers. So Megan worked at Jug Bay Wetlands Sanctuary, which is just up the road from St. Mary's, where they do a lot of wetlands research. And she was also a sustainability intern at the college. Caixa did a summer research experience with the EPA down in their Gulf Breeze Research Laboratory in Florida. And Megan also worked as a lab assistant when she was at Anne Arundel Community College. And so now they both have jobs as hydrologic field assistants with the USGS, United States Geologic Survey. And USGS, they do a lot of different things, but one of the things that they do is they kind of take the pulse of the water all across the United States, and they're based at the Maryland Water Science Center. So here's Caixa in the field. And this is a picture of Megan actually taken just a few days ago. Her work is so important, she's considered an essential employee. This is at Conowingo Dam up in the upper Chesapeake Bay, and it's a really important monitoring site to understand, how all the pollutants coming down out of the watershed affect the bay. So this is one of their priority water quality monitoring sites. So that's her out there in the field collecting really, really important data. And I'll add also that they got that job. So the USGS Water Science Center, I am listed as one of their contacts who they distribute entry-level job announcements to. And what they often do is they'll advertise a job for just a few days and then take it down. And so they'll just kind of ask trusted contacts to distribute job announcements to their students. And so that's how they found out about the job through me. They got the job all through their own hard work. But, so St. Mary's did a good job, I think, of preparing them for that work. And we also kind of helped them get connected with that USGS. So yeah, this one's yours.
Yep. No, could you close it and I had just updated it. So could you just close it really quickly and open it again?
Oh, okay. Yes.
Or just refresh it.
Refresh it. Yeah.
I just added something. So, next up we have, oh, it's coming. All right. Baynard, who was, he went by Bay. So that's what I'm gonna do that. And he was at St. Mary's from 2014 to 2000. Oh, it's coming. I'll wait. Thank you, Cassie. 2014 to 2018, and he was a double major in environmental studies and economics. So again, some diversity of experiences. He used for his final project, his St. Mary's project. I guess we should maybe take a moment when we talk about the research that these students are doing. The research that the students are doing is, are their St. Mary's projects. St. Mary's projects are required. Everybody has to do a senior experience. One of our senior experiences that we offer environmental studies is a St. Mary's project. St. Mary's project are a year-long student-driven a year-long student-driven project that is done under the advisement of a mentor. So it is an opportunity for the students. It's a culmination of their environmental studies experience, and the idea is that they'll bring together all the different things that they have done throughout the course of their time at St. Mary's, and they'll put it together and they'll do a project. And it is a project of their own choosing. And so students really feel that they have a lot of ownership of what it is. So in each of these slides, when we say research, that research was from their St. Mary's project. So Bay's research was on the potential of public food forests to improve food systems resilience. So he worked with a local community to think about putting in an edible forest. And if you see up in his on the picture that you see on here, he took those skills. He took a couple mapping classes, so GIS classes, and he used those skills to create the maps that he was doing for his forest, his edible forest. So thinking about the different ways that people bring together different skills and place them into these projects. So during his time at St. Mary's, as I said, environmental studies, economics major. We had a number of internships. He was a policy intern at the city of Annapolis, did the restaurant sustainability workbook. He also worked with that during that policy in front of the Paris Climate Accord. And he is now an assistant and analyst at the Congressional Budget Office. So using more of his economics, but I think the important thing is to think about the diversity of the experiences. So click to the next one, Cassie. Next up we have Hannah Krauss. Hannah Krauss was it's not graduate school. She's at the Chesapeake Bay Foundation. She graduated in 2019. She was a double major in anthropology and environmental studies with a minor in math. She was a DeSouza Brent Scholar. So one of the things that, one of the opportunities we have on St. Mary's campus is the DeSouza Brent Scholars Program. And these are for students who have been identified because of different life experiences that their transition to and path through college might face some challenges and difficulties. So we look at factors of race. So it's race, it's income. If you come from a very rural or a very urban area. And I'm trying to think of the rest. It's a very long list of
first generation.
Yep, thank you, Cassie. First generation students, and it's a support network that's provided. That resources are provided to these students to help support them through their process. So Hannah was a DeSouza Brent Scholar. She's also varsity volleyball player and was captain of the volleyball team. Had a number of awards, both academic and also around volleyball. And her research was on, it was entitled Black Lives on the Forgotten River and linking water pollution, subsistence fishing, and well-being along the Anacostia. And so she was looking at how different people who were living along the Anacostia were impacted by the pollution in the river, but looking at it from an anthropological and environmental studies perspective. And now she's a prospect researcher at the Chesapeake Bay Foundation. And she did a number of internships during her time at St. Mary's that helped her get to that position. So.
Am I doing?
Either
okay.
one.
Okay, so this is Melanie. She was at St. Mary's from 2015 through 2019. And she was a biology major and a double minor in environmental studies and art. She had, she did a lot of research while she was at St. Mary's. She worked with Dr. Malish, who is in the biology department, and Dr. Malish studies. I'm not a biologist, so I'm going to do a terrible job explaining what she does, but she studies various aspects of the physiology of birds. And one of her study sites is all the way out in California in the Sierra Nevada. And Melanie got to go out with her and do some research in the summertime at the Sierra field site. So they rent a cabin, they're out there for a few weeks, they're going out every day and taking intensive samples, but they're also hiking and swimming in these pristine lakes and getting to know each other, enjoying each other's company. So She also won a couple of awards while she was at St. Mary's. And now she is a PhD student at LSU, Louisiana State University, doing similar research to what she did at St. Mary's. And her graduate school advisor is a colleague of Dr. Malish's. So she was able to kind of make that connection to grad school through her professional network that she established while she was at St. Mary's. Do you have anything to add about Melanie?
Nope, I think you did great.
Okay, and so this is Lydia. She graduated in 2019. She was an environmental studies and political science double major. She was really active while she was at St. Mary's. So she was on the sailing team all 4 years, and she also coached sailing during the summertime. And she did an internship on Capitol Hill and was also awarded the Alumni Legacy Scholarship while she was at St. Mary's. And her research project, so her SMP, was a comprehensive analysis of cooperative environmental policy efforts between watershed states. So she was looking at how governing bodies that are established like across political boundaries, so how different states, even though they have different regulations, how they can work together to achieve a common goal, because you might have, for example, Chesapeake Bay, and she also looked at the Great Lakes. The land that drains into those bodies of water crosses state boundaries. So she was interested in how these partnerships that cross political boundaries can help achieve environmental outcomes. And now she is a staffer in Senator Cheryl Kagan's office. So she is a Maryland state senator. And I put this picture up there because I was, so I wrote Lydia a letter of recommendation for that job, and even talked to their person who does the hiring for their staffers. And so I was familiar with the fact that she had applied for that job. And then I was kind of perusing my morning Twitter feed, and I saw that Cheryl Kagan had posted something about her young staffers, and she was kind of poking fun at the fact that they weren't familiar with the Beatles. But anyway, I emailed Lydia. I was like, Lydia, is this you? She's like, yeah, that was me. She gives us a hard time all the time about not knowing the Beatles. So anyway, so Lydia went from St. Mary's to the state senator's office. And you'll see in this tweet that they were talking about clamming, dredging, and submerged aquatic vegetation. And all those things were topics that we talked about in my class, Chesapeake Bay Science and Management, in addition to other interdisciplinary environmental studies classes. So we often use Chesapeake Bay as a case study, since it's right in our own backyard, when we talk about a lot of the environmental issues that we delve into.
Should we keep going, or are people ready for questions? I guess that's, we have a few more slides, but I think if people would rather just start answering questions, I guess, or Jordan, you can advise what you think would be best. I mean, we're happy to keep going, but we do want to make sure that people have their questions answered.
Yep. So how about we can kind of keep talking, and while we go through these next few slides, you all should start posting your questions to the chat, so that we have a handful of questions that we can answer once we get through another slide or two.
Great.
Yeah.
All right. So next up we have Luca. So Luca was at St. Mary's from 2014 to 2018. He was a biology and political science double major with an environmental studies minor. And so again, right, we're seeing that interdisciplinarity being exemplified in the choice of those majors. So biology and political science, come together very well within the environmental studies. So his research were on leafcutter ants in Costa Rica. After he left St. Mary's, he joined the Peace Corps and did the Peace Corps in Panama. And he is now the community environmental coordinator for the Peace Corps in Panama. So after he did his Peace Corps service, he stayed on, but in a more of a leadership. It's kind of like a, I guess it's like an entry-level leadership position in Peace Corps. So that's Luca. I'm gonna do Andrew.
Sure. So Andrew was at St. Mary's from 2013 through 2017. He was an environmental studies and public policy double major, and then he minored in political science and economics. So that's a handful. He was on the swim team. He was a new student orientation leader. So that's actually something a lot of our students get involved with. First year students usually come to campus a couple days early before all the other students show up, and go through an orientation program. And that orientation program is mostly peer-led. So, students who are second, third, and fourth year students will come back and help lead that orientation program. So he was involved with that. National College Athlete Honor Society, Hayes Leadership Award. And his research was on transportation infrastructure and sustainable tourism in Machu Picchu, Peru. Also did a handful of internships, NOAA, Forest Service, Horn Point Lab over on the Eastern Shore. They have an oyster hatchery that a handful of our students have gone to do summer internships with. And now he's in the Johns Hopkins Master's Program in Environmental Science and Policy. And actually, that's kind of a popular program for people in Maryland. This is a professional master's program, so it's not a thesis-based program. And I've written several letters of recommendation for students applying to that program. So it's popular for people who want to go off and work, in nonprofits or in the government, and have leadership positions in the environment. So I guess do you want to kind of pause it here, Ellen, and start answering some questions?
I think that sounds great.
Okay, so I'll stop sharing my screen. So what kind of research opportunities are there involving this major? So I guess I can start and then.
Yeah, I'm just I've somehow, oh, there we go. I lost my screen.
Oh, okay. So
I couldn't see any of the questions. So, okay.
First question is, what kind of research opportunities are there at St. Mary's involving this major? So, there's, the research opportunities are diverse. And I guess I'll also add in there that, so I can talk about what some of them are in a minute, but also, if you are an environmental studies major, that doesn't preclude you from doing research with a faculty member who's in another department. So it's not like you are constrained just to research opportunities with faculty in environmental studies. Like, we're a small enough campus that you can kind of work with anyone, especially if you take classes in that area of study. But okay, so within the environmental studies program, a handful of our classes involve research, like real hands-on research. So I teach a field methods course where we focus a lot on coastal systems because that's what we have right in our own backyard. And so we do a couple of research projects involving wetlands and living shorelines. And also some water quality investigations. So, some science-y type of coastal ecology type of research experiences. And Ellen, do you want to talk a little bit more about the type of research students do with you?
Yeah, so both in my classes and through independent studies. I think just more broadly, there's a lot of different research opportunities, and a lot of it is what the students seek out. So it can either be with a faculty member, with a faculty member in environmental studies, or a faculty member in another department. And I think what Cassie said is really important in terms of the research that we integrate a lot of research into our classes. And so the Keystone class, which is a required part of the major, it is a project-based class. So in your capstone experience, if you do SMP, that's also a that is also a research-based project. But in terms of, I've had students working with me on various projects that I'm working on. So I had some students doing work on looking at how environmental justice policies have changed under the Trump administration in different states. So I had them researching different aspects of looking for different policies. I have another student who did some work. I actually had 2 students who helped me plan a conference. I got funding to do a conference in Kentucky, and I had 2 students help plan that with me. And so there's a lot of different opportunities for a lot of different opportunities that arise for the professors that the students can be a part of. And so there was another question as well further down that I just want to kind of tie into this, is also a lot of the research opportunities also come through internships. And so somebody asked what kind of internships are available at St. Mary's with this major. A lot of those are actually research-based. One thing that we're working on developing is some internships through the sustainability office. And so through that there would be some on-campus internships that would be around sustainability issues at St. Mary's. We also are working to build ties within St. Mary's County to different organizations to offer internships. We've had students work at Elms Environmental Education Center, which is right down the road. But then a lot of times we also use our own connections. Cassie was talking about that earlier with USGS and other places to kind of direct students to research opportunities in the DC and Baltimore area. So there's a lot of different aspects, and the Career Center works with students, has recently developed an environmental and a job shadow program, and there's environmental opportunities with the job shadow program that are environmentally based. So yeah, so anything else, Cassie? I think with that.
No, I don't think so.
Okay.
I mean, yeah, you can, the faculty at St. Mary's do a diverse array of research, and you could really do research with any of them. It's back to the research question. So the next question down is how much time will be spent doing work out in the environment versus doing work in labs? So that all just depends on the path that you choose to take. Some students, don't do a lot of science work because like we said, it's not an environmental science major, it's an environmental studies major. So the science courses that all the students do take typically involve some mix of field and lab work. For example, the Introduction to Environmental Science course that I teach, it's kind of a project-based course where it's structured around 4 projects, and 2 of them, I'm trying to think, 2 of them are in the field. And one of them is kind of in the field, but it's more of like investigating building energy use. So you're walking around buildings. And then we also do a lot of field trips to kind of places around campus that exemplify some kind of topic we're talking about. But if if you choose the science path, then you'll have a lot of classes that also have a mix of field and lab work, just depending on what type of classes you choose to take. But if you choose the political science path, you might not really have many more field or lab courses. It all just kind of depends on what you want to do. So you have a lot of choice in that matter.
Yeah, and that kind of goes into that next question of what does a typical environmental studies class look like, and what is the usual time of environmental studies class? It really depends. I mean, that's, I think, the beauty of why we're attracted to an environmental kind of studies class is that it really, like, there's so much diversity in what the classes are depending on what you're interested in. So in kind of our intro class, or introductory to environmental studies class, which everybody has to take, and this also goes, somebody asked about sizes, class sizes. So I'm going to kind of combine the 2 questions, but our intro class is our biggest class. It's usually between 25 and 30 students. And it is it's an interactive, but more kind of traditional lecture-based course. It's not, nobody's standing up there and telling you, just lecturing at you. But it is designed around kind of introducing you to the ideas around how the social sciences the humanities and science come together to form what we call environmental studies. And so those are the biggest of our classes. The rest of our classes cap out between 16 and 20, with the majority kind of depending. I guess how much environmental science is a little bigger, right, Cassie?
The cap right now is 32, but then the labs are smaller.
Right, and so the environmental science class has 32 with the smaller labs, so that makes up for it. But the majority of the classes are between 16 and 20 people. They tend to be a seminar style, really heavy in student involvement, very interactive classes. A lot of project-based learning is the approach that most of us take. And so, that's, in terms of the times vary from, I think, Cassie, your field methods class was just a 3-hour block, right?
Yeah.
So a 3-hour block once a week, to, Monday, Wednesday, Friday classes, that run about an hour. So.
And they all start at all different times. It
Yes.
just
depends on what, yeah, there's not kind of a set, we don't have a set schedule each year.
Yeah. So how does a degree in environmental science compare to a degree in environmental science at a large school like College Park? So I'll emphasize that our degree is not in environmental science, it's in environmental studies. And if you choose the science path, it would be an environmental studies degree with an emphasis in the sciences. So at St. Mary, I guess I don't know too much about what the environmental science program looks like at College Park, but I think it would be pretty safe to assume that at least the introductory classes are, 100, 200, 300 student lectures. So you would be going in and probably get talked at in a large lecture hall, with just a midterm and an exam as your major assignments in those classes. On the other hand, because we're a smaller school, it makes it a lot easier for us to have more interactive classes where, you're doing a lot of reading and writing, and getting feedback on that and having discussions with your peers and with the professors, and working on more hands-on projects. So that's probably, just in terms of like what the classes look like, one difference. And then I guess also in terms of, the degree, our environmental studies degree is more interdisciplinary than an environmental science degree from College Park would be. Whereas at College Park, they probably offer a wider range, a more diverse range of courses that you have to choose from. At St. Mary's, you would get exposure just to more interdisciplinarity in that major. And we also emphasize sustainability in some of our classes. A third of another one of our faculty members, Barry Muchnick, he studies a lot of things, but one of the things that he's very interested in is sustainability and sustainability education. So our students also do a lot of sort of applied sustainability projects on campus, which you might not have that type of opportunity to do on a larger campus with a larger student body like College Park. Do you want to add to that, Ellen?
I think the biggest I think all those things are true, but I do think the biggest difference is that, we're very explicitly the environmental studies degree with a focus in environmental science. So again, how we see it is we provide the context within which the environmental science can be done. And so we do encourage a lot of our, our environmental science majors to either minor in biology and chemistry or to do that double major that helps enhance their science experience. But I think that, what we really see is that context. And so, but I was also thinking that this question can also kind of dovetail on a question asked later is, do teaching assistants teach any classes? How many professors in your department have PhDs? And how is this impactful to the learning experience? I think this would be a difference as well between the kind of an experience at a place like College Park versus here. None of our courses are taught by teaching assistants. If we do have teaching assistants in our courses, we have them as they're more in a support role. So when I taught GIS, I had a student who was a TA. She came to every class and helped answer questions to students, and also was a space for students to go talked to her because was an opportunity for her to be a resource that they might feel more comfortable with instead of approaching me. So it took the ratio down from 1 to 20 to 2 to 1 to 10.
Mhm.
We have three core faculty members, all of us which have PhDs. We have as well a steering committee which supports the program and teaches cross-listed classes in that. And I believe there are five folks on that. And they all either have PhDs or other terminal degrees in their field. So I think that, you get a lot of access to expertise. And when we do bring in, so for example, sometimes we will bring in adjuncts that may not have PhDs, but they have extensive field experience. So John Lynn teaches many of our GIS classes, so our mapping classes. And he is a professional in the field and a professional in the field locally, which actually has been beneficial to our students because we have a number of students, and I think maybe a number, at least one, but a few students who have actually gotten jobs through contacts with John Lynn after St. Mary's. So it's a great resource that we have.
So we've got a question: what kind of internship options are available to St. Mary's with this major? I think that probably different faculty would answer that differently, but from my perspective, students can kind of get whatever type of internship they want, really. So there's lots of different internships out there in the world. And part of the idea behind an internship is to help students get a taste of a particular field or a particular type of work. And they don't always require extensive experience in that type of work or in that field. So, because the environmental studies major is so interdisciplinary from the very start, students do kind of have a taste of all of the different disciplines that think about environmental problems. So I guess the answer is whatever internship you want. Now, some examples of internships that our students have had, we kind of went through a lot of them in this slideshow. So students do research experiences over the summer. So if you're kind of science focused, a lot of students will, there's this program called Research Experiences for Undergrads, where labs all around the country host these programs for undergraduates to do a summer research project with a researcher. So a lot of students do that for the sciences. Students do environmental education type of internships with environmental ed centers locally and throughout the region. We have a Washington program where students do internships on Capitol Hill, and St. Mary's helps facilitate that and prepare students for that work. What other types of internships? Students intern with nonprofits all over the place, Baltimore, DC, Annapolis. Lots of internships available there. With federal programs, the EPA hosts interns. The Department of Energy has internships that our students have done. What else can you think of, Ellen?
I think, the diversity it becomes really important, that the diversity of those internships. And a lot of it is, students seek those out, but we help facilitate that, but students do seek those out and help that. But so in the interest of time, Cassie, I know there's been a couple questions about labs, and if you want to just jump into that. So the labs in the environmental studies program, but also outdoor lab facilities. And then I think the last question we should make sure we address is what would classes look like if they're online next semester? So if you want to do the lab quickly, because we're almost done, and then we can just kind of briefly think about that last question.
So in terms of facilities, so St. Mary's, like I said, it's waterfront. So we have A dock with so good water access. We have boats that can give us access to the water, and a handful of our faculty can drive boats and take students out on boats. And we have some small boats that students, if you have your Maryland boater safety and you know how to drive a boat, you can get checked out by our waterfront coordinator to take the boat out yourself, just a little skiff. We have the biology department maintains a wet lab with a really diverse assemblage of live corals, which a lot of our environmental studies students help out with. So they have students who are in charge of maintaining that lab. We've got a greenhouse that we can use for experiments and studies that involve growing plants. We've got a farm on campus, so students who are interested in agricultural applications of environmental science can do experiments on the farm, and a new program was just started where they can apply for a grant to get funding to do some of that research on the farm. And then all of the faculty that work with our students have their own lab spaces. So for example, I have my own lab space where I have, just some of the basic equipment needed to do coastal science research and some fancier instruments. So for example, one of the fancy instruments I'm about to get through a grant is an acoustic Doppler current profiler, which it's a really expensive sensor that you put out in the water, and it measures waves and currents. And so faculty throughout St. Mary's who do science research also have sort of similar setups where they have the basic supplies and instruments and some fancier instruments as well to do some more higher tech analysis. So there's the facilities, and in terms of the labs, again, they're diverse. It just depends on what courses with labs you're taking. So in an Intro to Environmental Science, for example, that's a course that a lot of our students take, and we would like to eventually make it a required course, but right now it's not. It just counts as a science elective. So one of the labs is just a field trip to a local homestead that does sustainable agriculture really well. We have a trip to a wastewater treatment plant. We have a lab where a sequence of labs where students conduct an assessment on campus of invasive species. So how bad are invasive plant invasions on campus? Living the campus on the water, we do a lot of water-based labs. So, water quality analysis, sampling fish, measuring fish, species abundance and distributions. Wetlands, we've got a lot of wetlands on campus. So we go out in the marsh and make measurements related to the plants, diversity and abundance. So anyway, a lot of different opportunities. And so like my emphasis is coastal science, so those are the examples I'm giving you, but like I said, we have faculty across campus who do really diverse research. And so there's a lot of other opportunities that aren't coastal science where students can kind of get out and do research too.
So just in the interest of time, I just want to quickly just make sure we don't ignore the elephant in the room question of what would classes look like if we had to be online next semester. And I think that's a great question to be asking. And also, no decisions have been made, but lots of discussions are being had. And I think that's the first thing that's really important to be said. We did the transition online in the middle of this semester, and it was taking something that we had planned out to be in the classroom, and we quickly put it online, and we did it through a bunch of diverse different methods. One thing that as we're thinking about what the fall might look like is that trying to maintain some of the St. Mary's way and the ethos of what we do in our classrooms and maintain them throughout how we're planning our classes. So for example, I'm teaching a project-based class in the fall, and the project-based class that I'm doing now, it's the same course that I've switched over online. My students were working with the local elementary school, and they're designing a community garden. There was a lot of interaction with the elementary school, and that's been a real challenge. And so as I'm thinking about the possibility of what would it look like if we go online, it's still going to be group work. It's still going to be a lot of interaction with me as a professor. It's not going to be just kind of a lecture that you watch, because I've taught those online courses at big institutions where I just, I've taught online courses where I've actually ever had a conversation with any of my students. It was all just done through kind of the Blackboard interface. But instead thinking about ways of what project makes sense that I can design that actually can be maybe even more effectively done in an online space. So it's probably going to be some sort of online, I don't even know what it's going to be, but it's going to be some sort of online based project. And so we're trying to think about ways that we can maintain the continuity of learning with the ethos of St. Mary's, with the ethos of a liberal arts education, but also recognize that these are unprecedented times, and unprecedented times require us to make different changes. And so there's been a lot of creativity in how it's been done, and a lot of thought is going into as professors, we're starting to talk now, we don't know, but we're not going to wait until a decision is made to start having these conversations within faculty about the best ways to make this transition, because we don't want to be in the position we were this year, which was emergency, that everybody just had to do it quickly. But we're going to start having these conversations now to think about how can we do it in a way that really enhances the learning experience if we have to be in a situation where none of us want to teach online, but if for safety we have to, how can we do that in a way that is most beneficial to our students? So I don't know if you wanted to add anything about that, Cassie, or I know, Jordan, we're out of time, but.
Nope, I agree. I agree with all that. That was great.
So thank you so much for your time. If both of you don't mind, could you drop your email addresses into the chat so that students can contact you? Again, this is being recorded. So everyone who's in the chat, you are more than welcome to take a view at this again, and all of this will be available to you in the coming weeks. But thank you so much. This was incredible. And if anyone has any further questions, feel free to reach out to us.
Yep.
Awesome.
All right. Thank you.
Thanks. Bye, everyone.
See you later, everyone. Have a nice day. Stay safe and take care.